round, the worst Disney sequel. This movie is the most putrid regurgitation of beloved Disney characters that I have ever seen, and unlike Mulan 2020, I had to watch this one before I figured that out. The movie in question is The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, because when you think of the sweeping, grand, emotional, and poignant story about isolation, abuse, religious tyranny, and fighting through racial prejudices in the 1400s that ended with an incredibly powerful message of cultural acceptance and determination through persecution, you also think about its younger wimpy sibling that's about evil circus people and bells that don't make sense. This movie is 5 seconds shy of an hour long, but trust me, it will feel like days. So we open. According to my sources, this film takes place 6 years after the events of the first story, and like most sequels, we start with kind of a happier tone following the positive progression of the characters that we met previously and how the events of the first film changed their lives for the better. And right off the bat, you can really see that the budget went pretty much solely to casting the A-list actors to recur in this film because, yikes! I don't feel like we, as a culture, talk enough about the beauty of the Hunchback of Notre Dame because it is literally gorgeous. From the sets, to the lighting, to the composition, to hell, the way people run downstairs. Everything is beautiful. Now obviously a Disney direct-to-video sequel is going to have its budget slashed harder than a horny teenager in a horror flick, but there are certainly other Disney sequels that held up the standard a bit better. I don't have many positive things to say about Mulan 2, but it does look comparable with the first film. Fox and the Hound 2, Cinderella 3, both Lion King sequels, and a couple others look genuinely pretty passable. So what the hell happened with this? My biggest gripe by far about this movie though is the writing. This movie feels completely disconnected from what came before it. So much so that if you told me this was just a random guy in a second bell tower down the street, I would not question you.
We just can't wait to celebrate our favorite holiday. Le jour d'amour, your song is in the air.
So what this lackluster opening song tells us is that there is a huge emphasis on this French festival called Le Jour d'Amour that's basically like French Valentine's Day, which as far as I can tell, this movie made up, which is weird because the French actually celebrate Valentine's Day pretty heavily from what I understand, and it was celebrated as a day of romance by the time the 14th century rolled around, which is at this point in history when the movie takes place. But I mean, why worry about historical accuracy? We're only making a period piece. The other thing we learn in the opening is that Quasimodo is still single, R.I.P. And he is looking for love, but has pretty much resigned himself to thinking it will never happen. Gee, I wonder what this film is going to be about. A big part of this imaginary festival is that Quasi is going to ring La Fidèle, which is this big fancy bell that is covered in jewels and glass mirrors on the inside. Now, I'm no physicist, but I think I know what's gonna happen when he hits it. In the next scene, we meet Zephyr, the child of Esmeralda and Phoebus, and we also get to see the two of them act like a pretty cute, lovey married couple, which is nice, but do not get used to it. So Quasi basically says that no one could ever love him, and Esmeralda gives him a pep talk, and we are introduced to handsome Quasi, and then, oh, the circus is in town! We meet Sarouche, who, gee, I wonder what his role is going to be, and then Madeline, who, gee, I wonder what her role is going to be. In this really awkward scene, we are introduced to a few things. So Sarouche is like the most obvious evil person ever, and Madeline is his worker that wants more out of life, which I mean is fine. No one is going to stack up to Frollo, like at all. So I don't even really blame them for having a villain that's not anywhere near as cool, but I mean, this guy just, oh boy, this guy. This scene particularly irks me because Sarouche gives Madeline instructions to go seduce Quasimodo and steal La Fidèle, so like all narrative tension, whatever of it there was, is completely out the window. I'm not sure what this movie's obsession with spoon-feeding us the narrative bullet points is, but it really annoys me. Maybe they knew the movie was so bad no one was going to possibly not see what was coming, so they figured they'd just hand it to us, and that way it didn't feel like the weakest rug pull known to man. I don't know. So Madeline and Quasi meet, and it goes about as well as you'd expect.
I have to go. I'm sorry.
The movie confirms that the gargoyles are actually alive.
The gargoyles!
So, okay. Probably the weakest aspect of the first film was, and certainly what annoys most people, is the inclusion of the gargoyles, which are there pretty much just to soften the movie a bit for any children watching. And while I personally don't mind them too much, in this film they are completely insufferable. But the one cool thing about the gargoyles was that it was pretty clear they were figures of Quasi's imagination, even though there is evidence in the movie, like particularly in the final act, that shows they are real. But the movie at least had the good grace not to confirm that and make it into a whole spectacle. But no, in this film it's just fine, I guess. Make the gargoyles real. Hell, make everyone sprout rings. I don't care. Festival time! And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the scene where all of my frustrations erupt like the zit you get on picture day because, oh boy. So far, everyone, as bland as they look and act, are within character. But this scene, they decided, you know what would make this movie good? Well, let's have Phoebus be accidentally racist towards his wife and make Esmeralda sound like a total jerk.
Zephyr, stay close. I don't want to lose you. I don't trust these people.
What does that mean?
Phoebus tells his 6-year-old, by the way, Zephyr is 6, like or 5.5, I guess. He's little tiny, he's a little baby boy. Phoebus tells him to be careful in a crowd full of strangers because he's worried that these strangers from out of town could be up to no good. And Esmeralda gets upset at this. She tries to turn it into an argument about him being prejudiced against her people, but that's totally not what he's saying.
What does that mean?
Well, just look at them. I mean, they travel from town to town like
Gypsies?
The circus isn't made of Romany, and they literally are strangers that just breezed into Paris. And what's worse is that he's right. These shifty assholes are looting and pillaging the whole town, and they end up kidnapping his son. But yes, Esmeralda, let's just not be cautious at all and spend what little runtime this movie has on stupid arguments. This made me so angry because never has Esmeralda been irrational in her pursuit of equality or justice, even going so far as to critique her own people when she feels like they cross a line. And Phoebus is anything but prejudiced. He was a fighter on Esmeralda's behalf pretty much the whole first movie, and he was appalled at Frollo's treatment of the people he persecuted, and he even put himself under a swinging sword rather than crumble on those beliefs. To try to paint him like the bad guy for being cautious is ridiculous, especially because he's a guard and it's literally his job to be skeptical. This culminates in a few more scenes and pretty much is this weird conflict between Phoebus and Esmeralda that never really goes anywhere because, as I said before, he is literally right.
That circus is responsible for a string of robberies.
What? How can you lump people together like that?
But the gypsies weren't guilty of crimes like these circus people.
Does Esmeralda ever apologize in the end? Do the two of them realize that maybe they were having a miscommunication and try to revisit the argument? Is there any character development that comes of this? No! Nothing comes of this. Why even have this in the film? Why did you do my boy like this? Why? Why, movie? Why? Ooh, first date.
Taste. Smell.
Quasi is wonderful.
You should have seen the first movie. So after a pretty lame song, Madeline and Quasimodo are in love and he takes her to see La Fidèle. She gives him a wee smooch and Quasi is completely smitten, and who wouldn't be? I mean, look at that face. Some more annoying shit on Phoebus action happens, and then Sarouche the douche threatens Madeline into continuing on with the plan, otherwise Quasi gets it, which, like, it should be making me feel something other than sleepy, but no such luck. So Phoebus goes to interrogate Sarouche, finally. I mean, he's only captain of the guard, which is just bad.
I'm here about a rash of robberies.
A rash. Oh, it's true, Captain.
Sarouche blames Madeline for the string of thefts he's investigating, and Phoebus believes him despite it being extremely obvious that, like, Sarouche is just making things up as he goes. All of this culminates in a really underwhelming climax where Madeline distracts Quasi and Sarouche steals the bell, and despite the gargoyles being confirmed alive, they do just F all with actually helping. Zephyr follows them and Sarouche does actual magic, question mark?
They stole it!
Dad was right.
Yeah, he was. The town is in an uproar and the race is on.
Sarouche! How could I have been such a fool?
It's okay, Phoebus. I blame the writers, not you. Obvious betrayal is obvious.
You used me. You were right.
Yeah, he was. Oh, cheese and crackers, we're almost done. It's a manhunt for Sarouche. Zephyr goes after him, Jolly straight up leaves him to die, and Madeline tries to help.
He's taken the bell underground.
And she could be saying exactly what Sarouche wants her to.
Maybe you should look again. Like you did with me.
I hate how they're trying to make sense of this so much. Okay, I was going to just sum this up, but the final conflict is so stupid. So Phoebus finds Sarouche, and like the whole guard is there. Swords drawn, and Sarouche is like, oh heavens no, let me go or you'll never see your child again. What is he gonna do to him? He's on a boat surrounded by guards with no way out. What is he gonna do to Zephyr before Phoebus or any of the other 50 men there get to him? Is he gonna drop him in the sewer? They're right there just hauling back up. Meanwhile, Zephyr is just screaming for help, and to be fair, this is the only time in the movie I felt any emotion.
Test me, Captain.
So Phoebus just lets him go, and they all watch Sarouche float away into the darkness with Zephyr still in his hand. So when is this transaction going to take place? Explain to me the mechanics of this hostage situation here. So are they just hoping they'll find Zephyr on the other end of the sewer somewhere? What was Sarouche's plan? How does Phoebus or Esmeralda think this was going to work? This is their son. But we have to do this so Quasi and Madeline can play hero.
A hush comes over the crowd as Madeline begins her graceful trek. I can do this. I can do this.
I know you can.
And her tightrope walking character arc is thus completed. Gee, it's a good thing Sarouche was just evilly swaying Zephyr in the air like a low-budget production of The Lion King, otherwise this would have gone awry.
I was wrong. About all of it.
No, you weren't! What were you wrong about? Someone explain this to me! OMG, yes, the one thing this film was missing wasn't good characters, a plausible script, proper allocation of budget, or even a narrative that was the slightest bit cohesive. It was the fact that Achilles didn't have a girlfriend. So Madeline and Quasi get together, they ring the bells, we get one more conversation about Madeline being aware of the gargoyle's sentience. And as if it couldn't get any worse, the gargoyle and the goat hook up. I think what bothers me the most about this movie is that it like definitely never would have succeeded. You know what I mean? Like Notre Dame is such a fantastic and beautifully executed film. No matter what they did, the sequel would pale in comparison. I just don't think anyone expected the sequel to pale this bad. At least I didn't. I've seen my fair share of pretty crappy Disney sequels. There's always something annoying about them. Mulan 2, Mushu's characterization is just abysmal. It's so frustrating. Like Pocahontas 2, there's just this weird shoehorned love triangle for no reason. Aladdin 2 is boring. King of Thieves is so much better, by the way. Just skip The Return of Jafar and watch King of Thieves. This one is just like so insulting. Like nothing was done well. None of it was nice and good. I can't even excuse it on like low budget aspect. You know what I mean? Like I can't even be like, oh, well, it was low budget. It's fine. It's like, no, it just sucked. It was just bad. But yeah, I've held this inside long enough, so I'm grateful to share it with all of you now. Check my TikTok if you want more frequent short-form videos while I work on my longer YouTube essays. This is a very new endeavor that I am starting. I have always dreamed about having a YouTube channel, and I'm finally at a point in my life where I'm able to create content. So to all who see this, thank you for watching the first one. I hope to only get better and hone my craft from here. Have a great day.